Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, a place where I interview tech leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, futurists, technologists, thought leaders, and even the occasional celebrity about how they are leveraging technology to transform their business. From social services to the NHS here in the UK, the majority of public sector organisations have undoubtedly been feeling the strain of funding cuts, staff shortages, and a lack of end-to-end digital transformation over the last few years. Now, with record numbers leaving to work elsewhere and services becoming increasingly squeezed by inflation, public sector organisations are now facing their biggest challenges yet. But for Satpal Biant at SAP, he believes that technology could be the key to modernising the management of staff working on the front line, while also halting that mass exodus from the public sector in the months and even years ahead. So after reading this, I invited him on the podcast today to talk about how technology can help streamline the admin, management and operation of staff working on the front line, and much more. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you are right now, I'm going to beam your ears to the UK, where you can join me and Satpal from SAP in conversation about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, really great to be with you, Neil. I'm Satpal Biant, and I lead SAP's public sector business in the UK. I've spent the last 23 years working in technology, services and management across all sectors within the public sector, which is an industry that I've really gravitated towards, mainly because I'm passionate about helping organizations achieve outcomes and societal impact. A bit about kind of background to me. Prior to joining SAP, I held a variety of leadership roles at Microsoft UK, most recently as their Chief Operating Officer for its UK public sector business. And prior to that, working for RM PLC, delivering complex and transformational IT managed services projects into the education market. I live in South Oxfordshire with my wife and 2 children. And when I do have any spare time, I'm a keen sports fan with a big interest in boxing, cricket, F1 and football, along with being an extreme Lego enthusiast.
Wow, an extreme Lego enthusiast. All those great interests. I had to pick up on Lego, but an extreme Lego enthusiast.
Yes.
Well, I need to know a little bit more about that. Is it big movie scenes, or what is it that you enjoy with it?
It's kind of movie sets that they produce. From kind of the Marvel and DCs through to their cars and Technic. I've always been a fan of Lego, and maybe it's the inner architect inside of me, and ever since a child, something I was always fascinated with, and it's a passion that's kind of rubbed off on my kids and wife as well.
Oh, I love that. Well, after this podcast, I will be asking for photos of your Lego collections. But for today's conversation, I think from social services to the NHS, the majority of public sector organisations have all been feeling the strain of funding cuts, staff shortages, and the lack of end-to-end digital transformation over the past few years in particular. But can you set the scene for today's conversation and tell me a little bit more about the scale of the problem with services increasingly squeezed by inflation, combined with increasingly being squeezed by inflation, and the general challenges public sector organisations face right now? Because there's so many pressures, isn't there?
There is, Neil, and I think the reality, unfortunately, is where we are right now. We haven't even reached the peak of demand for public sector services. We've had crisis after crisis over the last 13 to 14 years, obviously starting with the global financial crash, kind of leading to austerity, the COVID pandemic, leading to supply chain challenges, and now the energy and cost of living crisis. And all of these areas have a real impact on families and societies. And that is all going to mean, unfortunately, an increase in the demand for public services, be that the benefit system, the NHS, local services, social care, or policing. And so for the public sector, the challenge is how are they going to cope with that increase in demand that is going to come their way at a time when the reality is there will be kind of no real-term increase in investment due to the supply chain and inflationary pressures we're seeing in the economy. And kind of all of that pressure, plus having to keep the current set of services running, is going to be a real challenge for the public sector.
And one of the big reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast today is I've been reading about how passionate you are about leveraging technology to modernise the management of staff working on the front line and ultimately halting this mass exodus from the public sector in the months and years ahead. So can you tell me a little bit more about the role of technology and how it can streamline admin, management and operation of staff that are all working on the front line? Because we've all seen clunky examples of bad technology that doesn't work or garbage in, garbage out and all that kind of stuff. But can you tell me a bit more about some positive examples and what you're seeing and what excites you about that?
If we think about the challenges that I just mentioned, for me, technology has a critical role to play in helping the public sector kind of truly transform its end-to-end business processes and the way in which government runs. I think what I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years has been a focus on what I would call kind of digitizing current processes. So kind of putting forms on the web to kind of digitize some of those front office processes to try and drive productivity. And whilst I think that has delivered incremental benefits, fundamentally, the public sector hasn't transformed its end-to-end business processes in terms of how it functions and how it services our needs as citizens across those front office and back office systems, and really thought about radically how it can do the business of providing those services in a better way and how it can deliver continuous improvement. So I think to answer your question directly, Neil, we know that good technology experiences is a competitive advantage in the private sector in supporting job retention and recruiting. And I think we need to bring that same mindset into the public sector so that technology can really help streamline those burdensome kind of administrative tasks and free up that much needed productivity and capacity to cope with the increasing demand. So, for example, kind of technology can absolutely reduce the admin for social workers, for example, so that they can spend more time with citizens, kind of rather than having to come back into the office to process their casework or expenses, for example. We can deliver all of those experiences directly onto their smartphones or mobile devices. And if the public sector can get the technology experiences right, I think that's where they can really compete with the private sector for that new talent and retaining current talent, because they have the one thing that the private sector can't compete with, and that is their core purpose and values of service and care to us, ultimately as citizens in our greatest need.
Absolutely. And if we look at the private sector, there are so many different communication tools that we all actively rely on now, and that can be very different in the public sector. So can you expand on the importance of the need to facilitate greater communication between managers and employees too, and how that can lead to an improved understanding really of staff well-being and morale, because these are all incredibly important to empower staff to go out there and serve the public too, right?
Yeah, exactly, Neil. And I think this is a critical area that public sector organizations need to think about and really get right. But it's not just about the technology. I think it needs that cultural shift within an organization and a real willingness to invest and help support managers and leaders in driving their own continuous kind of professional development on how they coach, support and lead their teams. And I think kind of technology can help facilitate those easier communications. So, for example, being able to easily record and document career and learning development plans or set performance and goals, as well as those situational challenges that employees might be facing. For me, it's all about how the technology can be in the background supporting managers and leaders in how they can ultimately provide empathetic leadership.
And what role do you see HR software, including things like sentiment analysis and automation, etc.? What kind of role do you see them playing in tracking and understanding employee sentiment, would you say?
I think this has been certainly a fundamental shift that we've seen in the industry and one that SAP has been driving for some time now. We don't actually talk about HR software or what is sometimes called human capital management software.
Yeah.
We actually talk about human experience management. And And there's a critical difference there. For us, it's about the experience aspect. And it's that experience that what truly supports business transformation. So when I say experience, I don't mean kind of things like user feedback on the functionality of the software or how the application looks. Don't get me wrong; those are aspects that are important. But what is much more important is capturing the feeling, the real sentiment of the user, and being able to leverage that experience data with operational data from the system or application. So what that means in practice is that technology can help capture people's feelings and sentiment, and do that in an omni-channel way. So whatever their input kind of device is, we can capture that on a regular basis and allow managers and leaders to leverage that sentiment data alongside the operational and process data, to effectively make better, insightful decisions and get those early warnings on employee well-being challenge. And if we think about some of the public sector services on the front line, be that the NHS, or the police or social workers, kind of those early warnings on employee well-being are so critical in terms of helping employees through some of the challenges that they face in their day-to-day jobs, and helping to retain those individuals and those talents into the organization.
And I know you don't use this word, you've just said there, and I'm going to run the risk of triggering you here by saying three words, HR software and clunky. I mean, I've already mentioned the word clunky before, but is HR software finally losing that clunky reputation, do you think?
Yeah, I think without doubt, Neil. It's fundamentally moved from that administration of people or that human capital management mentality to experience management. And that is what's so crucial for me in helping to recruit and retain talent. To kind of give you an example, my top HR application that I use all the time is being able to find colleagues and understand their position and kind of their role within the business. And I can do that on my iPhone, the laptop, the iPad. And certainly when I joined SAP kind of just over 18 months ago, that was a godsend in helping me navigate the business, understanding and building those connections within the business and being able to do that quickly and simply to find that information. And I think it's that kind of example as to why kind of over 220 million users choose to use SAP's cloud human experience management software, because it's moving from the administration of people to really helping support employees in whatever role they do in supporting the organization, and help them deliver the outcomes that they need to deliver.
And of course, one of the oldest messages in business is you can't improve what you don't measure. So how can technology help monitor overall employee conduct? And also, would you mind expanding on why this must be repositioned around a broader conversation around service performance?
There was something you touched on earlier, Neil, around kind of data in, data out. And kind of, we all know kind of poor data in kind of leads to kind of poor decisions. But I think on something you said in the question, I don't necessarily think it's about monitoring conduct. But actually the emphasis needs to shift on how do you build trust with employees. And now that's not to say performance is not important, but for me, what modern cloud technology can provide is to really help managers and leaders know what staff are feeling, not just what they are doing. And so if we think about trust in the public sector, it's really important. And right now we have an all-time low in the trust the public, their citizens, has in our government. And so to rebuild that trust, for me, it has to start with the public sector employees and how those organizations that they work for build trust, kind of top-down leadership and bottom-up. But you're right in that you can't improve what you don't measure. And that for me is why kind of when we talk about experience management, actually we talk about total experience management. So that's around capturing sentiment data from citizens, from employees, their views on leadership, kind of any change program that might be going on in the organization, and much more, and how leaders can then couple that data with operational and business process intelligence data that really then gives them a powerful set of fundamentally data assets that can really help fuel the organizational trust and leadership within the public sector.
And I'm curious here, because when working on solutions at huge organizations such as SAP, how do you keep your curiosity and open-mindedness alive so you don't get disconnected from what your customers are going through? And is there a secret to that, or is it just an inner passion? I don't know what the answer is, but how do you keep your curiosity and open-mindedness alive?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Neil. And for me, this is something that's actually deeply rooted into SAP's DNA. And one of the reasons why I actually joined the organization was kind of they have a corporate mission, which is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. And so that helps me with my North Star on how I lead my team and support our customers. And certainly that helps the organization in terms of where we focus our research and development, in terms of ultimately, if it doesn't help the world run better or improve people's lives, that's not a focus area for us. And then I think it's kind of knowing that's the organizational direction as a leader, it's then about your own mentality. And for me, this is where I invest in supporting kind of my staff and colleagues as well around continuous development. So, for example, we have a big focus within the organization around growth mindset and how we encourage individuals to really embrace differences, to stay curious. And I love that question around curiosity. But also from a leadership perspective with our customers, making sure that we keep our promises and ultimately when things aren't going well, because there are always times when things aren't going well, that we tell it like it is and we're open and transparent in those conversations.
Love that. Absolutely love it. And as we look towards the future, what excites you about the road ahead and also the role that SAP will play in that future too?
Lots. I'm as you said at the beginning and opening, I love technology. Sometimes describe myself as a frustrated solution architect. Probably that's where I get my Lego passion from, kind of building things. But look, for me, kind of SAP recently celebrated its 50th birthday this summer. Kind of thinking about 50 years ago, we invented enterprise resource planning those kind of 5 decades ago. And now we are thinking about how we reinvent how the world can run better and improve people's lives for the next 50 years. And I love what technology can do to fulfill that mission. And I think SAP has a critical role, not just in itself, but as one of the world's largest software companies with others in how we can help make the world a better place to be.
Well, thank you so much for investing your time to sit down with me and share your insights on everything that you're seeing. But I'm going to ask you to leave us with one final gift for everyone listening. And this is the moment of the show where I ask the guests to leave everyone listening with either a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist and why that song's important to you, or a book that we can add to our Amazon wish list that maybe will inspire others or just encourage them to pick up the book and have a read. What are you going to leave us with today?
Well, it's a Monday morning that we're speaking up today, Neil. So I'm going to be generous and give you two. I'm going to give you both. I'm going to give you a book and a song. So starting with the book, I would recommend Tyson Fury's book, Behind the Mask and the Furious Method. And for me, it's the inspiration in how he combated his problems and talked openly about his depression. And for me, it's that story of how you can go to the deepest lows and rise back up to achieve great things, and the challenges he had growing up and having to deal with racism and discrimination, coming from a proud traveller community, and all those things resonated with me, and certainly helps me think positively that kind of whatever the situation, there were always aspects that are within your control in how you think about things and the mentality that you bring to those situations. And then from a song, which is actually quite connected to the book in how I view it, it has to be Kate Bush, When He Got That Hill. I loved it as a kid growing up. And actually, I love it even more now that my oldest son is hearing it from the TV show Stranger Things, if you're a fan. And for me, it's that interpretation of that song is a great inspiration, again, in terms of taking that growth mindset approach, seeing things with a no problems attitude and how you can get past things, no matter the obstacle or barriers, and fundamentally, no matter how big the hill or the building is.
Wow, what a great choice, or two great choices there. And before I let you go, SAP has got a huge website with a lot going on there. So for anyone just wanting to find out more information on the kind of areas that we've explored today, what's the best starting point for that, and also connecting with you or your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So if people would like to go to www.sap.com/UK/public sector, that will take you to all of the resources and support that we provide to the UK public sector. And if you want to get in touch, please message me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on linkedin.com/in/Satpal Biant.
Well, I love chatting with you today about, yes, how technology can streamline the administration, management and operation of staff that are all working on the front line, as well as improving communication between managers and employees, but also how technology can overall help improve employee conduct, and why we need to reposition around a wider conversation around service performance. So many big takeaways there, but more than anything, just thank you for sharing that with me today and leaving us with a great song and book too. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Neil.
I still get flashbacks from my IT past about clunky HR software, so it's great to hear that problem is finally being retired, and how technology is transforming this industry, especially including things like sentiment analysis and automation, and the roles that they can play in tracking and understanding employee sentiment. But we did cover a lot in a short amount of time there, so I'd love to hear your opinions and your experiences and insights about what you're experiencing in this field. I know that every podcast you listen to will have a message from your host telling you to please leave a rating and review. But in a world where we're all ruled by algorithms, it really does help the show reach more listeners. So please, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review. I always like to finish every episode by saying technology works best when it brings people together. And the fact that you tune in every single day further proves that point. So I hope you'll join me again tomorrow. But a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.